What if the way you've been having sex your whole life is the very reason you lost connection when you needed it most? Let me tell you a story. It begins in a quiet retirement community in Arizona. The sun was setting low, casting long shadows across the gravel paths where old oak trees rustled in the desert wind. That evening, Harold sat alone on a wooden bench. He was 72. Kind. Thoughtful. Recently divorced. He had just come back from what he thought was a second chance at love. He met her at a book club, Martha, silver-haired and sharp-witted, who made him laugh in a way he hadn't in years. They went out 3 times. Laughed over coffee. Walked along the edge of Lake Saguaro. Then one evening, she invited him in. That's when everything changed. As they leaned into each other, the moment turned tender, and his heart fluttered, but not with excitement. With fear. His body didn't respond. His hands trembled. His thoughts spiraled. He apologized, made an excuse, and left. He never called her again. Not because he didn't want to. Because he thought he was broken. Today, we're going to talk about that moment. About why it happens. And how you can avoid losing one of the most vital, soul-nourishing parts of life simply because no one ever taught you the truth. This video answers 3 deeply personal questions. 1. Why does intimacy often fall apart after 60, even when the desire is still there? 2. What warning signs are your body quietly giving you, and what do they really mean? 3. How can you rebuild not just performance, but connection, trust, and emotional vitality in your later years? And yes, this message is for you. If you've ever felt invisible in your own bedroom, or afraid to try again, or confused about why your body isn't working the way it used to, I want you to hear this with open ears and an open heart. Let's start with what no one dares to say: spontaneity isn't sacred. It's outdated. Back when you were 25, intimacy could strike like lightning. No warning. No planning. You could feel a spark in the middle of the day and act on it without hesitation. That's what made it feel exciting, maybe even powerful. But what worked at 25, raw instinct, biology, being ready on demand, stops working as we age. And here's the cruel twist: no one tells you that. So when something changes, most men think it's their fault. Like Harold did. But let me tell you about Gerald. Gerald was 69. Still walked 2 miles every morning. Ate clean. Took his vitamins. He'd lost his wife 5 years earlier. It took him 3 years just to stop setting the dinner table for 2. Then one evening, he met someone. It wasn't planned. She made a joke about the cherry pie in the grocery store line. He laughed. She laughed. They exchanged numbers. Weeks later, they kissed under the moonlight in her backyard garden. She reached for his hand and pulled him close. And Gerald, bless him, thought everything would happen naturally. Just like it used to. But it didn't. He froze. Fumbled. Apologized. Made a joke he didn't mean. She smiled, reassured him, said it was okay. But in his mind, it wasn't. The next morning, he told himself it was better to be alone than to fail again. That's the first cost of this myth, the myth that sex after 60 should still be spontaneous. It's not just disappointment. It's identity collapse. It's emotional grief. It's men stepping away from relationships they want because they think they're no longer men. But here's the truth, intimacy after 60 doesn't die. It evolves. Think of it like a campfire. When you're young, it's a sudden spark, a flash of fuel and flame. But in later years, that fire requires care, preparation, patience. You gather the wood, tend the embers, shield it from the wind. When you do, what you get isn't a flash. It's a slow, steady, warming glow. It's deeper, more comforting, more lasting. Planning doesn't ruin the magic. It creates space for it. It signals that this moment matters. That you matter. That your partner matters. And it gives your body the chance to catch up. That means checking in with your medications. It means making sure your heart can handle the climb. It means breathing, lighting a candle, putting on music, talking, laughing, sitting beside someone and saying, "I want this to be good for both of us." You aren't broken. You're wise. And the man who knows how to prepare is the man who can experience intimacy in a way the younger version of him never could. But this story doesn't end in the bedroom. Because what's happening down there? It's a whisper from your body. And the second question we must answer is this: what if your erection isn't just about sex, but your heart trying to speak to you? Let me tell you about David. David was 67. A retired pilot. He came into my office joking. "Doc, I just need a little boost." "You got something for that?" He laughed. But his laugh had a shadow behind it. You could see it in his eyes. That something wasn't right. We ran a few tests. Nothing dramatic at first. But a feeling made me dig deeper. 3 weeks later, David was in surgery for a 90% blockage in his heart's main artery, the one we call the widowmaker. He called me from the hospital. "I came in because of a bedroom problem," he said. But turns out, I was walking around with a time bomb. Most men don't realize this. But the arteries in your groin? They're much smaller than the ones near your heart. If blood can't flow to one, it's often already struggling to flow to the other. That means the first sign of heart trouble might be trouble in bed. And yet what do? We joke about it. We hide it. We blame age or stress or our partner. But rarely do we treat it like the red flag it is. An erection isn't just a response. It's a measurement. A signal. And when that signal changes, it's time to listen. Because ignoring it could cost you everything. Your pride won't save your life. But your willingness to ask for help might. So now we've covered the first two questions. Why does intimacy break down? And what deeper signals might your body be sending? But the most transformative question is still ahead. How do you rebuild not just your performance, but your presence, your connection, your sense of worth? That story comes next. So stay with me. Let me take you now to a small cottage by the coast in Maine. The waves outside were calm that day. You could hear the seagulls calling, and the old wind chimes on the porch click softly in the ocean breeze. Inside, Martin sat alone at his kitchen table, fingers wrapped around a mug of tea that had long gone cold. Martin was 74. A widower. His wife, Ellen, had passed 5 years earlier after 42 years of marriage. They were the kind of couple that still held hands in public. She'd tuck her hand into his elbow as they walked. He'd kiss her forehead in the grocery aisle. And when she passed, something in Martin dimmed. He told himself that intimacy didn't matter anymore. That at his age, who needed it? But the truth? He missed being touched. Not sex. Not the physical act. But the simple warmth of someone's palm on his shoulder. The safety in a soft voice that called his name. Over time, that hunger turned into something quieter. He stopped going to the community center. Stopped picking up the phone. His sleep worsened. His appetite faded. And his blood pressure kept creeping up, even with new medication. When he finally came to see me, he didn't mention intimacy. He just said, "I don't feel like myself." And that's when I told him something most doctors never say: touch is medicine. Not just figuratively. Literally. When someone holds your hand, when they wrap you in a hug, when you share a look of affection, it triggers a cascade of powerful hormones. Oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine. These aren't just feel-good chemicals. They reduce your stress, improve your sleep, lower inflammation, strengthen your immune system, even protect your heart. Martin didn't need a new pill. He needed connection. So we started small. I encouraged him to visit a weekly cooking class. Not to date. Just to be around people. Feel their presence. Smell the spices. Laugh at bad jokes. Weeks later, he told me he hadn't felt that alive in years. This is what most men don't realize: intimacy is emotional medicine. And when you cut yourself off from it, when you tell yourself that touch doesn't matter, that affection is for the young, you're not protecting yourself. You're starving yourself. The heart doesn't age like the body. It remembers. It longs. And when it doesn't get what it needs, it speaks through symptoms: anxiety, insomnia, high blood pressure, depression. Martin thought he had a physical problem. But what he really had was an emotional wound. And that brings us to a more painful truth. Because when that wound is ignored, when we go too long without being seen, heard, or held, many men turn to something else to fill the silence. It's not talked about much. But it's everywhere. And it's changing how men feel about their partners, their bodies, and themselves. I'm talking about pornography. Now, before you scroll away, hear me out. Because I've sat across from too many men who whispered this confession through tears. It started simple. A curiosity. A way to feel something again. To remind themselves that they were still men. But over time, the screen became a replacement. And soon, real connection didn't feel exciting. It felt dull. Walter, 71, was one of them. He served in the Navy. Built his own house. Raised 3 daughters. But somewhere along the way, after years of drifting apart from his wife, he turned to adult videos for comfort. He told himself it was harmless. But gradually, he stopped reaching for his wife. Stopped touching her. Stopped seeing her. He began to expect what he saw on screen: flawless bodies, endless novelty, instant gratification. And when real life didn't match, he felt nothing. Not because he didn't love her, but because his brain forgot how to respond to real touch. That's the tragedy. Porn isn't just about fantasy. It's about rewiring. It teaches the brain to expect what real life can never provide. And over time, the man who once felt deeply begins to go numb. He needs more stimulus, more novelty, less emotion, less eye contact, until even his own body stops responding. He feels broken, but he's not. He's just been feeding his nervous system something fake for so long that it forgot how to recognize what's real. And the good news? You can unlearn it. It starts by noticing how you feel afterward. That emptiness? That guilt? It's not weakness. It's your soul telling you, this isn't enough. Because what you really want isn't arousal. It's connection. And that kind of connection, the kind that stirs your spirit and softens your edges, only happens in real life. With laughter. With flaws. With two hands fumbling and finding their way back to each other. Letting go of porn doesn't happen overnight. But each day you choose presence over performance, you begin to heal. And that's the path to something far more powerful than just sex. It's the path to being fully alive again. But there's one final danger I must warn you about. It's not something you watch. It's something you feel. It sneaks in after a good day, a compliment, a spark you didn't expect. You feel young again. Capable. Excited. And you want to prove it. That's when many men make the most dangerous mistake of all. And we'll talk about that in the next part. Because it may just save your life. There's a moment that visits many older men. A surge of pride. A flicker of boldness. Maybe it comes after a flattering remark, you don't look a day over 50. Or after a checkup when the doctor says your heart sounds good. Or maybe it's the spark of a new connection, someone touches your arm, laughs at your joke, and suddenly, something inside you stirs. You feel alive again. And that's beautiful. But also, that's when many men make their gravest mistake. They try to prove it. To themselves. To their partner. To the ghost of the younger man they once were. Let me take you to a story I still carry with me. One I tell with reverence. Leonard was 74. Full of charm, energy, and good humor. He had been alone for a long time after his wife passed. Then he met a woman 10 years younger. They hit it off. Went dancing. Shared meals. Held hands like teenagers. One night, he decided to go all in. He skipped his blood pressure meds, just for the evening. Took a little blue pill, just in case. Had a glass or two of wine to loosen up. He told himself, I've still got it. But Leonard's heart was working overtime. His blood was thinning, his vessels dilating, his body stretched thin by age and effort and ego. That night, Leonard collapsed in the hotel room. Cardiac arrest. He never made it to the hospital. And his date? She was devastated. This isn't a scare tactic. This is reality. Sex after 60 is not just an emotional or hormonal event. It's physical exertion. It raises your heart rate, your blood pressure, your oxygen demand. It's a hill to climb. A joyful one, yes, but one that requires strength, preparation, and pacing. When you treat sex like a performance, you turn your partner into an audience and yourself into a risk. When you treat it like a connection, you build something lasting. The truth is, you don't need to perform like you did at 30. You need to be present like you never were back then. Back then, it might have been about pride. Now, it can be about love, safety, joy, And that shift, if you let it happen, can be the most fulfilling change of your life. I've had men come to me, ashamed after a failed night. I've had men break down because they thought they were less than. I always tell them the same thing. You're not broken. You're just trying to play a new game by the old rules. And that brings us to the real heart of this video. Because yes, there are risks. But there's something even more powerful than risk. There's a second chance. Right now, you may be feeling regret, loneliness, confusion. Maybe this hit closer to home than you expected. Maybe you've been sitting in silence, believing the best years of your life were behind you. But I'm here to tell you, they're not. You still have time. Time to reconnect. Time to heal. Time to love, not just someone else, but yourself. You can start again. Not by trying to be the man you used to be, but by becoming the man you were always meant to be. A man who values presence over performance. A man who chooses wisdom over impulse. A man who understands that aging doesn't mean fading, it means refining. So let's take a breath. Together. You've now heard 5 truths most men never do. 1. That spontaneity is not a strength, it's a myth. 2. That your erection is not just about sex, it's a signal. 3. That intimacy is not optional, it's emotional medicine. 4. That porn is not harmless, it's rewiring your heart. 5. And that proving your youth might be the very thing that costs you your future. These aren't just tips. They're turning points. Quiet choices that separate those who drift away from life, and those who choose to live it deeply. You deserve to be one of the men who chooses. And now, you can. Start by having the conversation. With your doctor. With your partner. With yourself. Not from a place of shame, but from a place of hope. Hope that love isn't over. That touch still matters. That your body isn't against you, it just needs new support. And that no matter how many candles are on your birthday cake, your desire to feel alive is still sacred. So if anything in this video spoke to you, if even one sentence stirred something in you, I ask you to do one thing. Type the number 1 in the comments. It's not for me. It's for you. To say, I'm still here. I'm still listening. I'm still learning. And if you haven't yet, subscribe. Not because you owe it to me, but because every man deserves to hear the truth in a world that too often tells him to stay quiet. Because silence steals joy. But the right words, at the right time, they can give it back. And if you're ready for the next step, if you want to learn how emotional connection heals not just your relationship, but your body, click on the next video now. There's more to this story. And it's only just beginning.